it's Danny from Sunny and Danny. This is little Sunny. Placed the clutch. Sunny is a 2020 model, and Sunny has about 76,000 kilometers on her. When I bought her, I was the second owner, so I'm not sure how the person prior to me was driving Sunny, but I did learn how to drive a manual in her. And the first week I had it, instead of going into fourth from fifth, I went into reverse. Oops. But when I got her, she's always been hard to get into second, so it's felt a bit like a task. Sometimes as well, it would just slip out of second, like you'd be taking off from the lights and go into second, but it would slip and grind, and you'd have to kind of quickly go into neutral and try and go into second. Reverse has always been a bit hard as well, like you'd have to pull up, so usually I'd have to go into neutral every time I wanted to go into reverse, if that makes sense. So I'd have to go first, neutral. It's like I couldn't just go straight from first into reverse. I'd have to go neutral, foot off the clutch, foot on the clutch, into reverse, and hopefully that works, because she'd grind a lot of the time going into reverse. It'd take us 12 hours, so there was my brother and myself for the majority of the day, and then around 4 o'clock we had my friend from work turn up, and he was a bit of a lifesaver. He gave us that push that we needed to get through, because it was a big job. It was a big day, but worth it, because I have the how hard can it be attitude. Surely we can do it ourselves, and I like my money, so I kind of just didn't want to pay someone to do it, even though it would have been easier. Been about 3 weeks ago now. I was coming home from work and I was like, something doesn't feel right. Like, I'd be going into gear, but it was really high revs and I was losing power. So I was trying to drive on the highway and it was just, and I wasn't really going anywhere. I got home and I was like, oh, that's sent a la clutch. Didn't think about it, drove it on Thursday and was like, something's actually seriously wrong. Like, this doesn't feel right. I haven't been driving manual that long, but I know that it shouldn't feel like this, and I know it shouldn't smell like that. Automotive Superstore, they had a sale on, so I was actually quite lucky with that. I got the clutch and Ozpost delivery for $472, and I think it took, so that was Thursday. The clutch was dispatched on the Tuesday, and then I think a few days later I got the clutch. So cost-wise, I'll put a bit of a breakdown here what I spent to do the clutch. So it was cost breakdown. I got the Exity clutch from Automotive Superstore. That was $472 including postage, and I got Ozpost postage just because yeah, the budget couriers on there were cheaper, but haven't had great experiences with like Amerex and stuff like that, so I went for Ozpost. Tool wise, I spent $239.89. We had to get a swivel head ratchet, and I'll explain why we got that and why it's probably a good idea that you get one. An extra extension, a socket. I got a new jack, and I also bought a new socket set because I wanted one. Like your consumables, so I needed transmission fluid and an oil pan, so that was $58 altogether for like your consumable stuff. So the total cost for me to do my clutch at home was $768.98. compared to some of the pricing out there, I think that's pretty dang good. Better than spending a few grand, and I know that that's the only option for some people, and I'm incredibly grateful that I do have a brother that's very car savvy. I've had car experience. I did an apprenticeship like 10 years ago, so I do have a little bit of knowledge when it comes to cars. And my friend that came over to help from work, he was also a mechanic in his prior. So I'm very grateful for the people that I did have to be able to come and help me, because if I had to do it myself, I'd probably still be here now and I'd probably be crying. Yeah. So that was the hardest bits about having to do the clutch. So I've got my iPad because it's got notes on it, and I have a memory like a goldfish that's lost its memory, so I didn't want to forget anything. The starter motor is connected to the gearbox, and there's this one little bolt, and you have about this much room, and it's hard to get off. The bolt took us about 2 hours. Obviously it had never been cracked before, so it was on there. We tried every socket, every extension we had to try and figure out how to do this, and I'm sure someone out there has probably done it in like 2 minutes, and there's a very easy way to do it, but it was just not playing nice with us. So that's when we ended up going and getting the swivel head. We got an extension and an extra socket, just because it was the extension was different size than what we had. Anyway. So to get that bolt from the top of the gearbox in the starter, it was my brother under and me in the engine bay. He was pushing, I was pulling, and with all of our might, somehow we clicked it. It cracked, and it was the most magical noise that we heard that day. But that was especially tricky to try and get off. So I'll put a link to all the little bits and bobs that we used to make our lives a little bit easier. The next tricky thing, so I don't really have any footage of when we did it because this video was a bit of an afterthought, but I do have some footage and some photos. But under the car there is this bar. It's a little crossbar, and the gearbox sits above it. On a lot of cars you can just unbolt that bar and it makes the gearbox nice and easy to drop out, but on the Jimnys, as you can see, it's welded, so it made it very tricky to try and get the gearbox out. So at the bum end of the gearbox, I'll see if I can find a photo, there is the gear selectors. They had to come off if we were to get the gearbox out. So the selectors came off. There was a lot of turning the gearbox, a lot of wiggling to try and get it out. But once, I recommend just take those selectors out straight away. You'll thank yourself, because the gearbox isn't coming out without it. The Jimnys are known for being small, yes, but it also makes it a little bit tricky when you're trying to work on them. You really don't have much room when you're trying to do anything under there. We were also working like this. We didn't have a hoist, and the clutch was so bad that we couldn't even drive the car onto the ramps. We had to push it onto the ramps. Confusing was taking the shifter out. We were like, what the hell do we do here? So jump in the car and I'll try and explain it that way, but I do have photos of this process, so hopefully it saves you. Because alright, so what you'll do first is take the boot off. We removed the UHF and the little dimmer dabber up here. Under here there is 2 bolts up here and 2 bolts down here. We ended up cutting a piece of the carpet in here because it was just easier to get to the bolts, and you can't even tell because everything covers it. And there's the 2 bolts down here as well that are also quite tricky to get to. So that plate has the bolts on it. The carpet was a casualty. It was like up the top end. It was too tricky to try and get to, and I thought I'd rather have a clutch than carpet. So we cut it, but you can't even see because the little holdy, what even is that? The bit down here, that UHF in the boot cover the missing, it's not missing, just the torn bit of carpet, the cut bit of carpet. It was a bit fiddly. I would recommend, if you're doing it, get the magnet attached, like the little mechanic magnets, so you can fish for the bolts and your sockets when they inevitably slide down into the abyss in the carpet. And once that's off, you'll pull the, so that'll come up, the little silver bracket will come up, and then you will see on the shifter itself, I think I have photos of that I'll put here. There's 2 bolts. So say your shifter is here, you've got 2 bolts on either side. You'll undo those, and then this is the part that stumped me. We're flanging it around trying to think. I was like, what the hell? And I can't remember his name, but I will put here and here the 2 people on Instagram that jumped in and gave me a hand with where this was. So shout out to you guys and the people on Reddit that helped me out, because massive thank you to the Jimny community for, like, honestly, everyone is just so kind and always so down to help each other. Very thankful for you guys, so shout out to you. And then you'll see on, I do have a photo of this, you'll see on either side of the casing, I guess, I don't know what it's technical terms, I don't know, the metal casing where your the cup, I guess, where your gear stick sits, you'll see 2 holes either side. And what you're gonna do is simultaneously push those in, we use screwdrivers, and pull the gear stick out. So it's not as hard as you'd think. It's quite easy, it's just confusing. Put it into 4 low. We just found that was easier when we were trying to remove the gearbox, because the transfer case and the gearbox are not connected. Put it into 4 low because the gearbox and the transfer case are not together. They're separated. So when we were getting the gearbox out, we found it easier to have it in 4 low. Just gave us a little bit more room. After that, you're gonna head under the car. Oh, actually, before I go any further, before you start doing all this in here, disconnect the battery. We forgot until all this in here was done, and then we went, maybe we should disconnect the battery, you know, it's probably a good idea. So we did that. We were very organized with this as well. We had sandwich bags and labeled everything that came out, every bolt that came out of the car, and how many wanted to be in that bag. I wasn't leaving anything to chance. So putting everything back together and having everything in those bags streamlined the process. Putting everything back together took us like an hour, if that, because it was so streamlined with having everything in order. So I'm pretty sure the first things we took out the exhaust, so don't forget to disconnect the oxygen sensor as well. So disconnect the oxygen sensor, take out your exhaust. Any bolts that were with that, they were in the bag, labeled how many should be there. Then it was the tail shafts, so they dropped out and they also labeled with a bag. At that point, we were like, okay, it's time to take the gearbox off everything. But also, I should mention here that all that came off, but we had to go to Super Cheap because that's when I needed to buy the transmission oil and the pan, because it totally slipped my mind that they were things that I was going to need. So got back, and then we started to try and undo all the bolts on the gearbox. They were tricky. A lot of them, like, they've never been cracked, so they were insanely hard to get off. Like I said before, you don't have a lot of wiggle, like you really don't have much room under there, especially when you're on ramps, on concrete with not much room. It's just gonna make it harder when you're doing it the way we did it. But as I said before, that one bolt on the starter motor, that took us like 2 hours, and that's including the trip to my work to go get the extras that we needed. It's right up the top, and I don't particularly have a photo, but I'll pop the bonnet and I'll show you where you're gonna be stuck, and hopefully it makes sense. I should have got... So I don't know if you can, it's not a very great video, you can't really see, but in here, this is the bit you're gonna struggle with. It's not a great photo, but you know what your Jimnys are like. There's not much room going on in here. I don't know if you could see it very well, but it was, like I said, not a lot of room for you to play around in there. After that came off, there was a few more bolts just around the gearbox that were hard to get off. Just like I said before, they'd never been cracked. You don't have much wiggle room. I should say too, we did use the Milwaukee impact wrench for some of this, but a lot of it we had to do by hand because you just couldn't get it in there, even with an extension, even with different impacts. It was tricky. So some of the ones that had to, like, that were up top, they had to be cracked by hand, and with any extension you could think of. So this was about 4 o'clock. We got the clutch exposed. Oh, hang on, let's backtrack. So yeah, once that's all exposed, like once you've got your selectors off the back and all of your bolts out, once you've got all the bolts out from the gearbox, there's a few cables you'll see. Disconnect those. It's not too tricky, it's a little bit finicky, but just disconnect all those cables that you see that are above the gearbox, and then you should be able to remove your gearbox. There was 2 of us holding it and wiggling it. We pushed it back over the crossbar. Oh, I should also mention, take your cross member out. There is a cross member that sits near the gearbox as well. I may have a photo of that. If I do, I'll put it here. If not, there is a cross member. Take that out. Otherwise, you're not getting your gearbox out. And then you can slide it back, and you'll have to do some wiggling, but you can wiggle gearbox out back, drop it down, and you can bring it out. We used a skateboard to wheel it around. It's not that heavy, but we were on the ground, so it was kind of easy to just wheel the gearbox back under as well. It's pretty light. I can lift the gearbox in from the Jimny. You're not gonna need a transmission jack or anything like that, unless you are doing it up. So say you're gonna need to drain your transmission fluid, and you by yourself use a transmission jack. But if you've got someone, the both of you can easily just carry it. We sat it on a little outdoor table. So once that was all out, the clutch was exposed, and this is when my friend from work turned up. So we got the old clutch out, and I will show you. Oh, you'll also need a bearing tool to pull bearings out. My brother had one of those. So this was the old clutch that was in the Jimny. As you can tell, there is no clutch left. Grab that so it's easy to see. It was just completely down to the wear marks. There was nothing left of her. At least I got my money's worth out of this clutch. There's a couple. I'll put a picture of what the new clutch looks like here so you can see the comparison between the two. It's absolutely insane how much wear is on this. It's bonkers. Yeah, that's the old clutch. I should also mention, when you get this dude out, it's going to have a clip through these bits here, and it hooks onto a clip that attaches to these sides. You're gonna want to take that off because you will need it to put onto the new one. In my Exity kit, I did get the new clutch, the bearings. I'll show you a photo of that. It does have grease on it. That was the old clutch, and as you can see, she was well used. I know people are going to ask, did you get your flywheel machined? Please don't yell at me. No, I didn't. This was a very big backyard mechanic job. It was. There was no gouges. The flywheel was smooth. There was a couple of heat spots. Wasn't really that many considering. So we used a flat disc and a grinder and did a little bit over the top. So don't yell at me, okay? Do not take my advice on this bit. Probably get your flywheel professionally machined. I did not. What are you gonna do about it? The car is going. I have not had an issue. The clutch feels fantastic. So, anyway, then you're gonna want to put it all back together. We cleaned it off, cleaned out the gearbox, cleaned the flywheel, got rid of all the clutch dust. So when you're going to drain the oil out of the gearbox, you're going to need 3/8 ratchet. This bit right here, that 3/8 is the size that you'll need to crack it with. You don't need anything on there. You just purely need this to crack where you drain the oil from and where you will fill up the oil. I used the squeezy transmission oil, and it was super easy. It's got the hose, goes in, and you just squeeze it in. But for us, the hose didn't want to come out, and it made life pretty oily. So once the clutch was in, you'll use the adjustment tool and make sure everything is lined up. Now, we didn't know how tight to do the bolts back up on the clutch. Everything that I read online said 23 Newton meters. So get yourself a torque wrench and set that bad boy to 23 and tighten it up to 23. I do recommend having a torque wrench. You can get some pretty cheap ones if you're just doing it for one job, but having a torque wrench if you're going to be doing anything on your car is probably a good idea. So get your handy dandy. Haven't had any issues. Being a clutch, you don't want it too tight. But the 23 was for a lot of the older Jimnys, so I'll keep you updated on that one, I guess. But yeah, no issues. 23, we all agreed that that was a good number. I mentioned here that you can get a haze book for your Jimny. This one here, I am going to buy it just because I think it'd be handy to have and keep in the car, because after doing the clutch, I feel a little bit more confident that I can just do minor repairs and stuff at home if needed. I could. And I'm aware a lot of this is higgledy-piggledy all over the place. I am trying to remember everything. But just message me on Instagram if you have questions and you're trying to do your clutch. What you're gonna want to do is put the gearbox back in. Make sure the selectors are in there. We had a little bit of trouble getting the gearbox back in purely because of that bar that is welded on, that crossbar. So that it does make things a little bit tricky trying to get it in. But once you're at this stage of putting things back together, you are on the home stretch. You can do this. It may have taken you 11 hours at this point, but you can do it. Have some pizza. We did. We ordered pizza and contemplated our lives. So this is when I said having those sandwich bags with labels on, very handy, because it was a matter of, oh, okay, what's next? Yep, grab that. It was tail shaft and the bags, put them back in. Pretty much what you did to get it all off, do it in reverse. Make sure you're putting the little cables that I mentioned that are around the gearbox, connect those back up. Don't forget to reconnect your oxygen sensor. You will need that. That bolt that was a problem on the starter motor getting it off wasn't so bad getting it back on. There you go. She'll go back on nice and easy. So we did it as tail shaft, main tail shaft, exhaust, and then the cross member last. Then we put the shifter back in, rolled the car off the ramps, and then when the car was flat, we filled it up with the transmission fluid. It really didn't take too long. I recommend having some brake and parts cleaner, any form of degreaser really, because I forgot to buy degreaser, so there was oil all over my exhaust, but it's fine. Burnt off, it's okay. And then once that's done, you've done your clutch. And you'll sit there and go, oh my God, we did that. Don't know how, but it's done. The clutch, obviously being brand new, I was so used to driving that other clutch where the friction point was so high up, and now the friction point is so far down low. So it's been a bit weird the last couple of days trying to get used to a different clutch. 3 times since the new clutch has been in, and that's less than I thought I was going to store, which is good. It's just trying to get used to a new clutch, but other than that, it feels really good. It is going into gear like butter. Like before, it felt like I was really working to push it and pull it into gear. There was a lot of, like, I wouldn't say a snap sound, but it was like a clicking sound every time it went into gear from inside the car. And now I don't hear that. It just slides into gear. I feel like I have more power as well. So I can stay in a gear longer than I could before. So I get more out of each gear. It's just getting up to speed nice and easy, that it's not struggling like she was before. It's actually been really good. I don't have any complaints about it. I will put a list of all the tools and everything that we used down below as well. I think that's really about it. If I think of anything while I'm editing the video, I'll add that in. But it is hard. I will say that it's not easy, and if I wish we had a hoist, that would have probably made life a little bit easier. We were all knackered the next day. Backs were sore. If you're gonna do it on concrete and on ramps, buy some creepers, so you can, if you've got that little bit of can-do attitude, how hard can it be? You've got one or two friends that'll come over and give you a hand. I recommend it. I mean, I learned an insane amount, having not done a lot with cars for a fair while. It was good to be able to get in there and learn more. I want to say a massive thank you to my brother for being the main champion in all of this and agreeing to help me with doing my clutch. My friend from work, a massive thank you as well, because you were our like final push savior. For watching, thank you for listening to me waffle about it. Hopefully this does help you even just a little bit with doing your Jimny clutch at home, because whenever I was looking for videos, it was all older models of Jimnys. There was no newer models. A little bit. I'm very happy about that. Like I said, I'll leave links to a lot of the stuff that we did use in the description, just so you can just easily find it. And if you need to ask me any questions, I do have an Instagram. It's Sunny the Jimny. What is my Instagram? Sunny the Jimny? I should know this. I'm pretty sure it's Sunny the Jimny. I'll leave the link in the description as well. So if you ever need to, like, just reach out. If you have any questions and I didn't answer it on here, just reach out. I think that is everything. Thank you so much for watching if you stayed this far. I hope to meet some of you guys at the muster next year, or just out and about. If you see me, wave, because I get really excited and I wave to every Jimny that I see, even if you guys don't know. Anyway, have a good day and thank you for watching.